Well, welcome back to another episode of Sweet Tea and Coffee. My name is Kendall McDonald. I'm the lead pastor here at Fredonia Hill. And as always, I'm sitting here. Today I've got some sparkling water and Blake's got some Sonic.
It is actually sweet tea that's in the Sonic cup.
Blake's true to form today. I'm betraying the coffee side of this show.
We're recording this in the afternoon, and if you drink coffee in the afternoon, it's not gonna end well.
I can't do that after about 2:00. So anyway, we are here and we are going to today respond to one of the questions that has come in, or one of the topics that folks wanted to cover. And they wanted to hear the story of how we got to know our spouses and how those relationships came to be. Now, what's interesting is, well, not interesting, none of you will be surprised that we both married way up. And so these stories are about how did we convince these two wonderful ladies to date us and then eventually to marry us. So I'm sure we have some fun stories in there, and we're going to get into both of those a little bit here on this episode. Thanks for hanging out with us. All right, so as I mentioned, we are going to get into the story of our how we met our spouses and how those relationships took off. And so Blake, we're gonna start with you. Now, Blake is a Nacogdoches native, and Ashley is not.
She's not. She's from the Houston area. Friendswood is where she grew up.
From the big city. So somehow she got here, and y'all met. Take us through how a girl from Houston and a guy from Nacogdoches end up getting married.
Well, it's probably important for us to preface to our listeners that we did not ask for permission ahead of time to talk about this. At least I didn't. Did you?
No.
Yeah. So that I may not tell her that this podcast is coming. It may just show up on the feed and then it's out there.
Yeah, this is somewhat risky, isn't it?
It's pretty risky. So Kendall knows this story, and so he's getting at something here. And so I told him when we sat down that I may have to edit this for content just to protect the names and identities of those involved. But
wow,
we'll see. I don't know. I may just let it all loose. Who knows?
Wow.
But so
hang on, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, this could get interesting. So Ashley is not from Nacogdoches, as Kendall mentioned. She is actually from Friendswood, which is down southeast of Houston, and she came here for college, and which is an interesting story in itself that I'm not going to tell, but maybe one day she can tell that how she ended up in Nacogdoches. But it wasn't. I guess we didn't meet immediately when she came to college. It was actually a year or so after she came to Nacogdoches, and oh goodness, I'm trying to find an on-ramp to this story without. I think I'm going to have to just say all the details. I think I'm just going to have to do it.
All right, you're taking your life in your own hands here.
I am. Okay. So there was one day after church. We were at the hot spot in town, and it was Chili's Bar and Grill. I think that's where all the stuff goes down in Nacogdoches.
That's where it goes down.
And we were, me and my buddy Paul, who was playing bass for me that day at church, walked in, and there was a group of college students that were back in the back party room back there in the very back of the restaurant.
Which we were there, and is not now a party room.
Yeah, they're changing it.
To-go room.
Yeah, it's kind of sad.
But it's a landmark here in town. So Blake's about to tell this story, and you can go visit the very spot.
You can visit it. There's a historical plaque on the wall that says this is where this event happened in 2006 or 5 or whenever that was. But anyway, so I look back in this room, and like any 20-year-old, I was scoping the place out to see if there's any prospects, any ladies in the room. And I looked in that party room, and there was one girl, and I leaned over to Paul and I said, I don't recognize that girl. Who is that girl? And he goes, oh, that's That's Ashley. She's hot, but she's got a boyfriend.
Oh,
And-
no.
Yeah, and
So you're not in the party room.
no, I'm kind of on the outside, looking
on
through
the
those
outside
blinds. You know,
glass.
I was like creepily looking through the blind. No, we're on the outside, and I said, "This is the next part that just makes me look like a fool." But I go, "Well, we'll see about that."
Wow.
And so that was the first time I was aware of who she was, and just so happens she started doing It's funny how this story. There's that cocky attitude that I had just then, but it's also intertwined with like all this like church Christian, culture thing going on. So the next part I'm saying, well, now she showed up at a Bible study at the church I was working at, and so I knew that they met. Their Bible study was on Tuesday night, and I held the practice for our band that we led for Great Escape, a worship service on Tuesday night. And so I don't even know if she knows this exactly, but like
Well, she will now.
that practice I timed perfectly to
Oh,
where
here
we
we
would
go.
be done, and I'd be like walking through the hallway at the same time they were getting out and coming through the hallway as well. And that
Wow,
was
that's-
actually the first time that we met. So I knew of her, but then we met in the hallway.
You were that dialed in that you knew that this is.
yeah.
I'm going to arrange this meeting.
I mean, I said we'll see about that.
Yeah,
So
but
I had
you
to I had to put a plan in motion to make that meeting, and so
it really is the classic Christian love story. Chili's and Bible study.
yeah,
I mean,
Chili's
you
Bible
just-
study. Yeah,
Those are two ingredients that when those two go together,
yeah.
love is born.
So anyway, we ended up hanging out quite a bit over the next couple of months, and I'm going to leave a lot of detail out here.
There you go.
But eventually, we started dating and got married a couple of years later.
Okay, so I think that's interesting that all that hanging out. I assume I've heard you talk about this a little bit before, but before you guys started dating, so there was a point of building a friendship,
Right.
that kind of existed in between that. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah. So, we would, college ministry is interesting. There was all these activities always going on. And we actually met early in the fall. So there was like all the back to school stuff that were
Right.
happening. And so there was always something going on every night that we could go hang out and play ultimate Frisbee or,
Yeah.
I lived in a house outside of town, and we always had the guys that lived there. We always had like a campfire every night in our front yard, and so people would always come over almost every night and hang out and play guitar and darts or whatever it was. That we had some sort of activities going on. So there was always that opportunity. I think we went to a Mute Math concert one time. That was a big turning point in our relationship. So.
Well, the reason I point that out, and Lindsay and I's story is similar, where there was a period of time where we were building friendship. It's interesting to me that it seems more and more like dating happens kind of in a vacuum. I think with the advent of social media. I mean, when you and I were at that time of our lives, I remember in college, I don't even know if anybody's going to recognize this, but the social media, I don't even know if you call it that, was a AOL Instant Messenger.
Yeah.
And you would get somebody's screen name and you could talk to them that way. But there was.
Yeah. This is interesting. I was talking with one of our Armor Bear students this morning, and part of his focus of study is the history of social media, which I laughed out loud at because I was like, my freshman year of college is when Facebook came out.
That's right.
And I had to have an SFA email to even log into Facebook. And I probably did that and then added Ashley, and we started sending, instant messages to each other or whatever. And I was like, that's crazy that there's enough history now that they would have
there's a history
focus
of
of study that's a history of social media, which is nuts.
But I think I think that was such an important, in terms of, when you're dating, or when you're looking to date, so much of what's important is their character and what are they like around friends, and
Right.
Friendship is a foundation and a basis for a relationship. And I just think it's increasingly getting more difficult because people are interacting online, and then jumping kind of right into dating relationships. I'm not saying this is the only way it happens anymore, for sure, but I think it's increasingly getting that way. I think it's more challenging because, who somebody is really comes out in friendship and in groups of people. And I just think those spaces are harder and harder to get into.
That's interesting because, and what's funny is that Ashley and I have like two different dates. So when we say that we officially started dating, like they're within like a month or two different, of like, in my perspective,
who's earlier and who's later?
I'm totally earlier. I'm like, we were hanging out every night. We were a thing. And she's like, no, not officially until this date or whatever. But it's because it was like so much of our lives were kind of intertwined and hanging out in those groups of people and doing these activities, that it kind of gets foggy. But those moments, like you said, that's when you really begin to know somebody,
Yeah.
It's not just a stat sheet on a screen saying this is who this person is.
Yeah, so I need to know. I mean, I mentioned at the top of the show that we both married way up, and so we had to pull out some of our best stuff to try to impress. Did you have any moments where you? I mean, like,
well, Kendall, let me just
pull a rabbit out of your hat.
Let me enlighten you a little bit on something. I didn't have to have any kind of like special lines or moves or anything like that because I was in a band.
Oh, that was your special
I'm on stage and I'm like the center of attention, you get a cool haircut and all the things that band people do. And that just brings them towards you. You just can't. You have to fight them off.
This is an important point where we need to jump in and we need to talk a little bit about your cool haircut, because
I don't have it anymore. I can tell you that.
Yeah, people won't see that now, but there was at one point a version of Blake Russell with the bleached tips.
Yeah, that was earlier than this, but yeah, that was closer to the 90s when that was more of a thing. So that's not the man
that Ashley met?
No, by this time she calls it like a faux hawk. It wasn't really.
Oh, wow.
It was just kind of done up a little bit in the front when there was still hair there to do up.
It was a church leader faux hawk.
Yeah, it wasn't like full on.
Yeah.
But I've mentioned this in other podcasts. Whenever we went to Nashville, they said, well, you look like you're a band. And I think maybe that's what they were talking about.
Yeah, for sure. But you've also said that you've dressed, I mean, I'm looking at you now in your collared shirt and jeans and boots, and you said you dressed the same way since you were basically dressing yourself. So how does that get along with bleached hair and faux hawks?
Well, those two looks went together for a little while. The fit of the jeans has probably changed over time.
Okay.
But, I'm going to wear plaid shirts and button downs, and that's been cool since I'd say that's been cool. That was cool back in 2003. So I'm just going to keep translating that for the next 20 years.
I just think it's really important that our audience understands when Ashley first laid eyes on you, what was she looking at? I mean, what Blake Russell was she looking at? This
there's photos floating around.
Faux hawk.
No, yeah.
Who is this guy?
That was what he was trying to figure out. You know what's interesting?
He was lost.
I'm just going to make it worse. You know what's interesting is that at the time when we met, I'd actually dropped out of college too. And so I was in, I came into college not expecting to finish college because this is kind of jumping back to the story I had before. I kind of thought I'd go into music but college was just kind of buying some time until I sorted that out. And that all kind of came crashing down. And so I did not spend a lot of time in class the first couple of years of college because I was out. I was traveling and just wasn't a lot of motivation, and that caught up with me. And so SFA pretty much said, hey, you're going to have to like get your act together or don't come back to school.
Yeah.
We're going to put you on probation or whatever the term was. And I was like, you know what? I probably just need to not be in school right now. Before you kick me out, let me just go ahead and remove myself and just recalibrate and figure out what I need to do. So actually there was a year time there when Ashley and I first started dating that I was out of school completely.
Did she know that?
Oh yeah, I pretended to go to class every day.
That is part of my story. I pretended to have a class to interact with Lindsay. We'll get into that maybe another time.
But anyway, so it's amazing that she continued to date me, and her parents continued to let her date the guy that was a musician.
This is where we need Ashley
out.
here. I wonder what level of detail she shared with her parents.
Probably not.
Hey guys, I'm dating this musician.
Yeah, probably the bare minimum. Yeah, they may not even know that to this day, that I was not in school at the time. But I did go back to school, and I did get my degree and recalibrate, and I had pretty decent grades after I came back in. But I had to get focused.
That's right, and that's interesting. I think that's a lot of people's story, is that coming out of high school, in those first couple of years, it can be disorienting, and people trying to figure out which direction they're going to go, and so those first few years can really be hard.
Yeah,
to get traction.
you come into it either not having a clue what you want to do, or you have an idea of what you want to do that doesn't pan out. And like for me, I came in with an idea of what I wanted to do that had nothing to do with college, and so it's like I'll be undecided, and that's what I was for a while, until they were like, "You got to pick a major." And I was like, okay, well, they don't have Christian musician as a major at SFA. So I got an A in political science last semester. Let's go with that. And I became a political science major for a little while, until I realized I don't like to sit around and argue all day long with people. And then started doing very poorly in school. So had to do some more changes there. So,
it's funny when my dad loves this story, but it's the same kind of deal. Pick a major. And I remember I'm in high school, I'm looking at the list, and I had friends that had pretty clear ideas of what they wanted to be when they grew up,
right.
Sort of thing. And at that point, I was still very early in thinking out, what does a call to ministry look like? I have no idea what that looks like. The idea of going to a Christian college and then a seminary and kind of that route never even entered my mind. I just went, okay, I know I'm going to go to tech, and I kind of always known that. That was something I was looking forward to doing, but I don't know what I'm going to study. What is someone who wants to be in the ministry study? And so I kind of looked at the list and thought about it, and I just finally went, you know what? I'll just do what my dad does. That's easy. I'll just do it at my desk. Well, my dad's a petroleum engineer.
Yeah.
Okay. And I remember telling Dad this. And what's funny is I didn't realize it in the moment, but he tells this story and just thinks it's hysterical. But I tell Dad, okay, I think I'm gonna be a petroleum engineer. And he kind of pauses and is like, well, okay. Are you sure? And he knows what being an engineer is like, and he knows me, and clear,
it's like that may not be the fit. Right.
Yeah.
Fit.
From the very beginning, Dad knows this is not going to work well. So, but we go through, the last thing a parent's going to do in that moment is go, no, that's a bad idea.
Yeah.
If this is what you think you want to do, well, let's do it. So we go to tech, and it's like the freshman, it was before we moved in, but it was like the freshman orientation thing where you're going to visit and you meet.
It's like a preview type deal.
Yeah, I think it was a preview. So we weren't quite in school yet, but it was the summer before. And you go to the specific college that you're going to be enrolled in, and you meet the professors and do that sort of thing. So we go to the petroleum engineering school. And the first thing they do is they put you through a personality test. So you meet some professors, whatever, and then they put you through this little skills assessment, personality test. And then every student, because when I was going through, it was a pretty small program in terms of freshmen that are entering in. And so then you sit down with an advisor within that school, and they go over the results. And Dad, this is where he just gets rolling laughing, because they're going over these results with me. This guy's sitting in there, and the guy's pretty perplexed by the same reasons that Dad thought this is not going to work are the same reasons this poor advisor's sitting there with my sheet that's talking about my skills and the things that I want to do and who I am. And he looks at that sheet, and I'll never forget. He says, well, we don't normally have this kind of student
Even
in our
get the-
petroleum engineering department. Dad's like, that's when I knew this probably isn't going to last long. But it was like you were saying, I mean, it's like I had no idea.
You had no idea. You don't have any
sure
perspective.
Enough, it lasted one whole semester. And I got into my first petroleum engineering class and then kind of started looking at what I was going to have to study after that. And it was like, this is for sure not for me. And I think I ended up changing within less than 2 years. I think I changed majors 3 times.
Wow.
Just trying to figure out
yeah.
where I belonged and where I fit. And somehow I ended up in public relations, loved it. Still not sure that was, that was some road to prepare me for pastoral ministry, but ended up having a good time there. But it's funny how you just go through this process of figuring things out. And so anyway, so you guys are friends for that period of time. Back to our stories, and then begin dating, and from there, like no breakups, I mean, just from there, just straight to wedding bells.
More or less.
Yeah.
There were a few times that she tried to break up with me. I was like, no, that's not what you really want. And but it wasn't what you'd assume. It wasn't like I was being a turkey or anything. It was just like,
I love that. Yeah. No, that's not what you want.
Yeah.
We are not going to give our wives a fair shot here.
They're going to have to come back and do their own episode where they explain
I was going to say
no.
We can't allow them to do that. This is our version. But that's so funny. I would love to hear Ashley's perspective on that.
So you mentioned tech, and so obviously that's where you and Lindsay met in the barren wasteland out there.
Yeah.
And so that in itself is an interesting story. So kind of how'd that happen?
Well, so I can get into a little bit. We're running short on time. We may have to get into more of this later on. But the long and the short of it is we had a mutual friend. So Lindsay was in Spain.
Okay.
She was studying in Spain. Lindsay loves Spanish, ended up majoring in Spanish, got her master's degree in linguistics because she loved to teach. She taught English to foreign language students, just loves language. And anyway, so she spent a semester in Spain studying Spanish. Great thing to do if you're going to learn Spanish.
That's a great place.
It's a great place. There's lots of Spanish.
You're not going to go to like Ireland to practice Spanish.
So she went to the right place. So over that semester, my roommates and I, we had started an organization, a student organization, and one of the people that was really helping us do that and that was real involved with us was one of Lindsay's really good friends that she knew from high school. Lindsay's from Azle, which is around the Fort Worth, Weatherford area. And anyway, so we became, our group of friends kind of got close with what would be her group of friends. She wasn't there at the time.
Yeah.
Over that semester and just started hanging out a lot. And then over the summer. And so when Lindsay came back, she was going to be roommates with this girl. So when she came back a little bit before school started in the summer, she just kind of naturally fell into that group. And I remember meeting her for the first time. It was one of those, I met her and we just hit it off really, really quickly. And I told my roommate pretty early on, just like, I think that's the girl I want to marry, and whatever we mean when we say
because
that.
You're so wise at that age.
Yeah,
exactly,
that's right. That's right. We talked about that the other day. Man, we got married at 21 and we knew nothing, but there we went. So anyway, that's how we met. Now we have, and I think we're okay. I'll try to tell these stories. Okay, we'll tell these stories quickly. But so we became friends. We hung out quite a bit, and I'm crazy about her from day one. She was not convinced. Lindsay has this rule, or had this rule. She doesn't still have it, but she had this rule where she was not going to date anybody younger.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I don't know what you think about that rule. I think it's kind of silly, but anyway, she was not going to date anybody younger. Well, I'm only 8 months younger than her, but we were technically in different grades. What does grades matter when you're in college? But she still had this rule.
It doesn't matter now. It kind of still is fresh when you're just into college, you know.
Yeah,
It's
but we
like,
weren't. I mean, this was she was going into her senior year. I was a junior.
Yeah.
So this is,
Yeah.
come on.
Yeah.
We don't need
That's
that rule
okay.
anymore.
Yeah.
But she had that rule, which she says actually helped me because she knew I was younger. I was immediately in the friend zone. So I wasn't
even qualified to be.
I wasn't
more.
even qualified, but I was crazy about her. And the very next semester, the fall semester, after I'd gotten to know her a little bit and hung out in the summer, I had this online class, which is it's shocking that there's such thing, that there's like a computer online class at that point. It was when those first started out. And the way it worked is you had to go to class the very first day, and you sat in the class the very first day, but then the rest of the class you would work online and kind of go at your own pace. And then towards the end of the semester, you'd bring your stuff back in. Okay. So I go to the class. It's an 8 a.m. class. The first time it's an 8 a.m. class, but it's only going to happen once.
Right.
Well, I have an 8 a.m. and a 10 a.m. And so I go to my 8 a.m. I go to the student center. Now Tech is massive. I mean, the campus is massive. There's thousands of kids. I mean, it's huge. Right. So the odds of you running across people that you know and whatever, it's pretty slim.
Yeah.
And especially going to the student center, which is this massive building. So I go, and oh my goodness, I bump into Lindsay Black. I could not believe it. There she is. You know, this girl that I'm crazy about. I've been developing some friendship and made some ground, but now summer's over, and then there she is.
Yeah.
Well, we get to talking, and we hang out for that that hour, and she tells me that she's got a break every day, or whatever it was, every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or whatever the day of the class was, from she's got an 8 a.m. class and a 10 a.m. class. So she's going to be there and do some studying there. Well, that was the only day that was going to actually happen for me.
Right. Yeah.
But you better believe.
Not anymore, though.
Not anymore. You better believe that I'm going to show up every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or whatever it was, at 8 a.m. with my backpack on, just like I did the first day. Because if I do that, then I get to hang out with her. Right. And it's not this obvious thing. Like it's a little bit covert, and I'm just going to get to spend time with her. So that entire semester, I pretended like I had that 8 a.m. class just to get a few minutes of time.
And that's like the long play to try to like change her mind about dating this young whippersnapper, you know.
You know, I didn't actually know about the young thing until after we started dating. And she kind of she basically was telling me the underdog version, like how did I actually make it? And she said the thing that helped you was the friend zone thing, that I just saw you as a friend and my guard was completely down, so we got to know each other really easily. There were none of those walls. But I'll tell you and this will be the last story I'll tell, and then we'll shut it down. But the killer. So I got to be her friend over that semester, and the final blow. I'm dying. I'm at this point where I just can't take it anymore. I'm crazy about this girl. I have no idea how she feels about me, but I'm gonna fall apart or move on. Like I gotta move on or whatever. So I kind of get to this point, and the straw that breaks the camel's back. I could tell you where I was in Lubbock. I was driving, and she calls, I was pumped. She calls, and she asked my advice for this other guy that wanted to take her on a date. And she wanted to know whether I thought that she could go on this date or not. And it was a crushing moment. But I thought, okay, I've got to
This is like a big test, though.
I mean, it was a massive test, because I thought I've got to keep my integrity here. And I don't see anything. I mean, there's nothing she's telling me that's wrong with it, that I would really reasonably say you shouldn't go on the date. So I said, I think you should go. I think you should go, whatever. So I told her that. I hung up the phone. I thought, that's it. It's over. Well, my parents were in town. This is really funny. My mom's such a hero. And my parents were in town. We went to the football game, and then the next day they were taking me to IHOP, because that's what parents do. Parents feed you well when you come into town. Yeah. And, I'm sharing this with my mom and dad, and just like, I'm crushed. She's it's over. She's chasing this other guy, or this other guy's chasing her, whatever. It's over. And mom kind of just gets this little fire in her bones, and she goes, well, have you told her how you feel? And right there over my pancakes, I realized, you fool, you never told her how you
What did you expect?
What did you expect? So I kind of said, well, no. And mom goes, well, you got to tell her what you feel. And I'm this hopeless romantic. So it's not like, okay, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to plan that out. And then maybe in a week or two, it's like, I'm calling her
right
today. And I called her and I said, what are you doing tonight? She said, well, I'm going to church. I said, no, you're not. You're not going to church. We're having a conversation. And I poured out my heart. And turns out she felt the same way.
Okay. I thought that she'd be like, thank you.
Yeah.
And then walk away.
Thank you, but no thank you. No, it turned out good for me. But anyway, that's the story. I'll tell our first date story another time because I immediately fell flat on my face on our actual first date.
Wow.
But that's how we met. So there we go.
Determination,
pure determination and the power of God.
Yeah.
Because without it, I would have
Absolutely.
never won her over. Anyway, it's funny. I love hearing those stories. Blake, thanks for sharing. We'll have to,
we'll see how this turns out.
Yeah, we'll see if we're in trouble or not. But if you want our wives' perspective, you'll have to ask them. We're certainly not going to let them tell the true story.
That's
in
just,
public. That wouldn't do.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, I hope that's been at least entertaining for you, and thanks for listening. As always, if you've got things that you want to hear us talk about, different topics, different questions, we're trying to drum up some interest in a Q&A kind of podcast, maybe a sort of like a rapid fire sort of deal. Yeah. So, if you want to send in questions, you can do so at STC. Send us an email, stc@FredoniaHill.org.
Yeah.
And then we'll be able to see those. And thanks for your feedback. Let us know what your thoughts are, and we will see you in the next episode.
See ya.
Adios.